What's the biggest concern with the 2025 Texas football team? Steve Sarkisian responded to that question earlier this week. We've got the answer on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You were locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We'll get to some Texas baseball conversation, including a positive injury update on preseason All-American Max Ballou a little bit later. But first, some Longhorn football. What's the biggest concern with Texas football following the conclusion of spring practice? Steve Sarkisian was asked that very question earlier this week. And here's what he said.
I don't know if I have necessarily concerns right now about our team. You know, I know we have areas that we need to continue to improve upon, and I wouldn't say there's an area in our team where we're just perfect. You know, everybody, we all got work to do. You know, but at the end of the day, it's combining this group of, like I said, that juniors, and there's a few seniors in there, with this influx of a young, talented group of guys that just came in, and then, you know, integrating the transfers into this mix so that we get the right flow, not just in the locker room, but really, you know, we like to play a lot of players, you know, and how many times did I come up to you guys post game, especially early in the season, and say, hey, we played 42 guys on defense in the first half, right? And we think there's a lot of value in doing that. Now, players have to earn those opportunities to do that, but surely that's when we're at our best, because, again, I think big picture, I think the long road, the long game, and when you start talking 15, 16, 17 games, you're going to need a lot of bodies, and we're going to have to trust these guys early in the season to go do that. But again, they have to earn our trust to put them out there to go do it.
Again, there's Steve Sarkisian from earlier this week. And starting from the jump, I love hearing Sark say that he doesn't really have any concerns with his team right now. I mean, that's awesome. And I don't think that's just coach speak, right? I mean, Sark isn't usually the type of coach who calls out individual players or even dunks on a position room. But there's not an obvious problem with this football team right now. Are there questions that I have? Are there questions that you have? Sure. But, you know, I feel confident about where this thing is. Now, am I as confident in certain areas as I am in other areas? No, but I don't think there's one massively obvious concern with this football team coming out of the spring. Like last year at this time, I had a few big concerns. What was the secondary going to look like after a horrible 2023? Remember, Steve Sarkisian decided not to move off from Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon as the secondaries coaches. The Longhorns finished outside the top 100 in pass defense, and of course that cost them in the college football playoff loss to Washington. It was a huge concern about what the secondary was going to look like in 2024. I was worried about the defensive line after losing T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy to the NFL. I was worried about the move to the SEC. Yeah, Texas had just won the Big 12, but that's the Big 12. This is the SEC. Are the Longhorns good enough to compete in the best conference in the sport? I was also worried about Texas being able to deal with success. Remember the last time the Longhorns had a great season, they played for a conference championship. They won the Sugar Bowl against Georgia in 2018. The Longhorns followed it up with a massive dud in 2019. Obviously a different coaching staff, but still, the last time I got my hopes super high as a Texas fan, my dreams were crashed pretty early on the following season. So all sorts of questions that I had at this time last year. And again, this isn't a completely flawless team, but I think if you surveyed 100 different Longhorn fans and asked them, hey, what's your biggest concern with this team right now? I think you'd get a wide range of answers. And that tells you that there's not one obvious issue with this Texas football team right now. And again, now that I've seen this thing sustained over multiple seasons, now that I've seen Texas go into the SEC and have a bunch of success playing for a conference championship in year one, I feel really good about where things stand with the Longhorns going into 2025. Sark, of course, went on and talked about getting the right flow with the freshmen and the transfers coming in. Of course, Texas had 22 early enrollee freshmen. 21 of those 22 participated in spring football. The 22nd is Jonah Williams, who, of course, is playing baseball with Jim Schlossnagle and company right now. But the vast majority of the number one recruiting class has already been on campus, and a few of the transfers that Texas brought in were already here for spring practice. So you've got a lot of that process already taken care of. And, Sark talked about just making sure that he and the coaching staff trust guys in the 2 deep, guys in the 3 deep, guys in the 4 deep to go out there and play games when we get to the regular season. I mean, if that's the biggest concern that Sark has, if he's like, oh, we played 40-something guys in a game last year, so we need to have 40-something guys good enough to play in a game this year. If that's your biggest problem, if that's your biggest question, then you're doing all right. That is yelling from a yacht. That is the ultimate first world problem. Do we have enough third stringers to where we can play 42 guys in a game against Sam Houston when we get to the month of September? That's the biggest concern. Again, things are going well. But I want to ask y'all. I always want to hear from y'all. Comment below if you're tuned in on YouTube. What is your biggest concern with this Texas football team coming out of the spring? I'll give my answer. I'll go less coach speak than Sark because I actually do have questions about this team versus just what Sark was talking about. The offensive line is the biggest question mark for me. I'm not too worried about it. I think the offensive line has a bunch of talent, and I think they're going to be pretty good this year. But you are replacing 4 starters there, 3 of whom were NFL draft picks. The other one was Jake Majors, who started more games at center than any other center this school has ever had. Those guys aren't going to be easy to replace. The good news is you've got experience in that room. I mean, DJ Campbell is your one returning starter. Cole Hudson has started 13 games and appeared in 38 games going into his 4th year in the program. Now, for some reason, Texas football's website hasn't updated Trevor Goosby's page with his 2024 numbers, but we know he played in a number of games last year, including some big games down the stretch when Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams had to leave games with injuries. So I'm not worried about those 3 guys right there. I think they're going to be perfectly fine. We've seen them get the job done at Texas. The other guys, Neto Umeozulu, the left guard, Brandon Baker, your projected starter at right tackle, those guys have yet to start a game or really play any significant snaps at the collegiate level. So when they get thrown into the fire at Ohio State on August 30th, are those guys ready for that level of competition, that atmosphere, everything that goes in to being a starting offensive lineman at the University of Texas? And in that game specifically, being able to take on a top 3 to 5 team on the road in your first collegiate game. That's a question mark for me. And obviously going into the SEC, I mean, you look at the games that Texas lost last year, they couldn't run the ball. The 2 Georgia games, the Ohio State game, the Longhorns averaged less than 1.5 yards per carry in all 3 of those games. And they got bullied a little bit on the offensive line. And that was with a top 10 pick in Kelvin Banks. And also, guys like Cam Williams and Hayden Connor and Jake Majors there as well. So the offensive line could very well be fine, but it is my biggest question mark / concern with Texas football as we record this on April 30th, 2025. And honestly, I didn't love the consistency of the offensive line last year, even though Texas had 4 returning starters from 23 to 24. All they were replacing was Christian Jones at right tackle, and they replaced him with Cam Williams. There were some moments, again, those 3 losses come to mind, where Texas wasn't as good or consistent enough or physical enough up front. So I think if everything goes right for this offensive line, the potential could even be better than what we saw from that unit this past year. But again, only 1 returning starter. There could be some early issues. There could be some consistency issues. And everybody knows that a bad offensive line impacts everything. You got to keep your quarterback healthy, number one. You got to give him time to throw the football. Number two, you think about the Longhorns' issues in the red zone. Yeah, you can point the finger to Sark. You can point the finger to Quinn. But some of the finger pointing has to go to the offensive line play from the last couple of seasons. You need a good O-line to run the football effectively. All of those things. You guys know what I'm talking about. This isn't rocket science here. But yeah, offensive line for me is my biggest question mark, but would love to hear from y'all in the comments below. Number one, your thoughts on Steve Sarkisian's comments. Number two, what is your biggest concern with Texas football going into the summer? Love to hear from y'all. All right, let's shift gears here. We've got some NFL draft fun facts surrounding Texas football. I don't know why I added 3 extra letters to that word. If you like hearing about how good and how healthy this program is under Steve Sarkisian, you don't want to miss this segment coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Monarch Money, today's video sponsor. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out and game tickets and online shopping and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They are your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over all of your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. Now, there are plenty of those out there. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center. You could track all of your accounts, all of your investments, all of your spending in one place. So you don't just have to manage your money. You can actually start building wealth. It's so easy. If you have 5, 6, 7 different budgeting apps on your phone, it can get confusing. It can get annoying. It can get tedious. Get rid of all of them because you only need Monarch Money. It's all in one convenience right there at your fingertips. So make that a goal this year to take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get 50% off your first year. MonarchMoney.com is the website. Locked On College is the promo code. You do that, you're going to get 50% off your first year at MonarchMoney.com. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. We've got some NFL draft fun facts for you here. Of course, Texas made plenty of noise across the 3 days in Green Bay, last Thursday to Saturday. These stats and numbers and factoids and nuggets, whatever you want to call them, they're kind of cool to hear because they're a testament to the success of this program and the job that Steve Sarkisian and his staff have been doing. On the other hand, some of them are going to make you scratch your head. They're going to be a little mind-boggling because a lot of these nuggets are, it's the first time since X, which makes you wonder, why the hell has it been so long since X has happened? But let's dive into to some of these right here. Texas had 23 players selected in the last 2 NFL drafts. Of course, 11 last year and 12 this year. The 23 total draft picks in the last 2 years, the most amongst college football teams all over the country. The 23 total draft picks, also the most the Longhorns have ever had drafted in a 2-year period in program history. And that's regardless of how many rounds the NFL draft has been. Remember, it used to be way longer than just 7 rounds. That move happened in 1994 where the draft got shortened. But even in years where the draft was significantly longer than it is now, Texas never had 23 players or more selected in a 2-year span. And not just for Texas, the 23 draft picks Texas has had, the second most a college football program has ever had in a 2-year period. Georgia in 2022 and 2023 had 25 players selected across that stretch. So not the best ever, but the second best ever. That's really impressive when you think of just how many great college football teams and how many dynasties there have been in this sport over the years. Now, keeping things more in-house, the 23 draft picks in the last 2 drafts, more draft picks than Mac Brown ever had in any 3-year period. Mac's 3-year record was 18. From 06 to 08, Texas saw 18 players get drafted in that 3-year stretch. Again, 23 in just this 2-year stretch. Not to throw any strays to Mac Brown today, but think about how many players the Mac era Longhorns would send to the league every single year, they never had a 2-year run like this. Hell, they never had a 3-year run as good as what these last 2 years have been for Longhorn football. So yeah, the development is absolutely there. I think we've mentioned this one before. The 3 first-round picks ties for the best ever in school history. The Longhorns had 3 selected in 1942 and in 1980. And this is pretty cool too, because we saw what Alabama did under Nick Saban. We're kind of seeing what Georgia's doing under Kirby Smart, right? Those have been the best dynasties in college football over the last decade and change. Only more Alabama than Georgia, but still, those are the top 2. The Longhorns are tied with Alabama and Georgia as the college football programs with the most first rounders in the last 2 NFL drafts, with 5 total. Those are the teams you're trying to emulate. Texas, again, starting to get and develop the talent like those 2 schools. Of course, the 12 players that Texas had selected this year, the most since the 7-round model went into effect back in 1994. And here's some of the head-scratching numbers that I alluded to earlier. There have been 4 NFL drafts that have taken place following Steve Sarkisian's first season at Texas back in 2021. The Longhorns have had 28 players drafted into the NFL. That number is more than Texas had in the 10 drafts prior to Sark arriving, which was just 27 total. Yeah, in 4 years, 28 players drafted. The previous 10 years, just 27 players drafted. Oh, by the way, the 28 picks under Sark, twice as many draft picks as the Longhorns had in the 4 drafts prior to Sarkisian arriving, which was 14 total. So even though Sark had 0 players selected out of Texas after his first season, he still doubled up the number of Longhorn draft picks in the 4 drafts that he's been a part of compared to the 4 previous drafts on teams coached by Charlie Strong and Tom Herman. That's amazing. Amazingly bad how bad things were, but amazing how quickly Steve Sarkisian has been able to turn things around. And again, that's with 0 players selected after Sark's first season. You have some friends who root for A&M and Baylor and SMU and Texas Tech and these other schools across the Lone Star State. How about this? Texas, again, 12 players drafted, more than any other school in the state of Texas. Not only that, the Longhorns had more players drafted than all the other state of Texas programs combined. A&M had 3, SMU, Texas Tech, and TCU had 2, UTSA had 1. Those schools combined had just 10 players picked. By the way, Baylor and Houston, you didn't hear me mention them? Well, there's no reason to mention them. They are the only 2 in-state Power 4 programs who did not have a single player drafted. Not great, Bob. Great for Texas, not great for them. Thanks, Houston, for Matthew Golden. We were happy to develop him into an NFL draft pick. We appreciate y'all passing him along to us. But that's amazing. More Longhorn players picked than all of the other in-state schools combined. Speaking of Matthew Golden, the 23rd overall pick by the Green Bay Packers. That's the highest any Texas wide receiver has been selected since Roy Williams went 7th overall to the Lions back in 2004. More than 2 decades ago. It's the last time Texas has had a receiver drafted that high. Jahdae Barron picked 20th overall. That's the highest any Texas defensive back has been picked since Kenny Vaccaro went 15th to the Saints back in 2013, more than a decade ago. And if you're just keeping things specific to corner, which of course is Jahdae's position, the last Texas cornerback to go that high, Aaron Ross, back in 2007. Been a while. Andrew Makuba, the first Texas safety drafted since Caden Stearns, went in the 5th round in 2021. He's the highest drafted Longhorn safety since the aforementioned Kenny Vaccaro went 15th to the Saints back in 2013. How about this stat? Hayden Conner, 6th-round pick of the Arizona Cardinals. The first guard drafted out of Texas since Casey Studdard. Good friend. Great dude. Casey Studdard was drafted in 2007. I'm not talking about like 6th round, 5th round, 4th round, any round. Hayden Conner, the first guard drafted out of Texas since Casey Studdard went in the 6th round back in 2007. How is that possible? How is that possible? Well, I know how it's possible. If you watch Texas try to play football from 2010 to 2022, It's pretty clear how that was possible. They weren't very good, and they weren't developing guys at all. But that's an amazing, mind-boggling statistic there. Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams both drafted. It's the first time the Longhorns have had two tackles picked in the same year since 1976, when Bob Simmons and Rick Thurman went in the same class. And then Jaden Blue goes to Dallas in round 5. That's 3 years in a row that Texas has had at least one running back selected in the draft. That's the longest streak in program history at the running back position. That's also the longest active streak in college football. Last but not least, if you combine guard and center into just interior offensive linemen, which a lot of people do, Steve Sarkisian is now one of 8 active college football head coaches that has had every offensive and defensive position drafted during their tenure. Sark did that in 3 years. So only 8 active coaches around the country can say that. Steve Sarkisian was able to accomplish that feat in just the last 3 years. So again, some fun stats there, stats that show you just how good and healthy this program is right now, but also some, oh my God, were things really that bad for that long? Yes, things were really that bad for that long. But thankfully, the key word there is were. Right now, things are pretty good. It's a fun time to be a Texas Longhorn fan. It's a very fun time to be a Texas baseball fan. How about 10 in a row for the Longhorn baseball team as Texas cruised to victory over Prairie View A&M last night? We will recap the game and provide you with a couple of positive injury updates for Jim Schlossnagel's crew. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. Welcome back to Locked On Longhorns. Texas baseball took care of Prairie View A&M at the Dish last night. 11-2, the final score. Could have been a trap game sandwiched between series against some of your biggest rivals, with A&M in town last weekend and then this trip to Fayetteville coming up starting tomorrow. It wasn't. No problem for the Horns. Prairie View A&M, not a very good team. Texas did exactly what it was supposed to do. The Horns jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the bottom of the first inning. They broke the game open with a 6th-run fifth. Very positive sign. I think the best takeaway for Texas, Easton Winfield, the transfer from ULM. He's had a tough go of it in his first year in Austin. He hit his first bomb of the year last night, a 420-foot opposite field blast. He was also 4 for 4 at the plate, had a double in there as well. Far and away the best game of Easton Winfield's Longhorn career. Look, I don't know if that's enough to get him a whole lot more playing time. Texas only has 10 regular season games remaining and only one more midweek game left. So maybe we'll see Winfield play, next Tuesday against Lamar. Maybe he can creep his way into the lineup in one of these weekend games. But regardless, happy for him. That was a positive sign from last night's victory. Texas as a team hit 3 home runs. Casey Borba went deep. Will Gasparino went deep as well. The Longhorns had 12 hits. Rylan Galvan got a half night off. I thought he could have had the whole night off, but I'm not going to question anything Jim Schlossnagel is doing right now. Number 1 team in America, 5-game lead in the SEC with just 9 to play. The guy knows what he's doing. Thankfully, nobody got hurt for Texas, and it was good for Rylan Galvan to get off his feet for at least half of last night's victory over Prairie View A&M. Texas used 5 pitchers, none of their best guys. Cade Bing, very good, 3 innings, gave up just 1 run. Shout out and a cap tip to Hudson Hamilton. Only his 4th appearance of the season, 3 scoreless innings in relief. Again, Texas gave up 2 runs. They used 5 pitchers. They were able to give their best guys a few extra days off before the Arkansas series gets going tomorrow night in Fayetteville. The injury updates, as promised. Jim Schlossnagel told reporters after the game that Jonah Williams should be back for the series against Arkansas. Williams has been dealing with a hamstring injury that kept him out of the sweep of A&M. That still feels good to say. And Jonah Williams did not play last night, but according to Schloss, it sounds like he could be good to go starting tomorrow. What does that mean? Will we see Jonah Williams back into the starting lineup where he was before he got hurt? Will he just be available as a pinch hitter, pinch runner, defensive replacement kind of thing later in games? I don't know. But the way Schloss was sounding, it sure makes it seem like we are going to get Jonah Williams back in the lineup again as soon as tomorrow. And then another positive update, the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year, the preseason All-American, and one of the best players in college baseball, Max Ballou, is progressing. Now, Schloss did say he's still probably 2 to 3 weeks away from returning, so don't expect him in Fayetteville. But this is great news. The fact that Texas could get Max Ballou back before the end of the regular season. I mean, when he got hurt, it was, boy, Texas might have to make it to Omaha. And even then, we're not sure if Max Ballou will be ready to go. But now all of a sudden, he might be done, to he might be back before the regular season concludes. That is great news. I saw our friends at Horns 24/7 reported that the earliest possibility for a Ballou return is probably that regular season finale series at Oklahoma, which begins on May 15th. Maybe the SEC tournament is a little bit more realistic, but it sounds like Max Ballou is ahead of schedule, and he is doing everything he can from a rehab standpoint to get back on the field. I mean, this guy is awesome. I don't have to tell you all this. He reached base safely in 24 of the 25 games he played in before that thumb injury. He was a top 10 MLB draft prospect, according to D1 Baseball, going into this season. I mean, he's a monster. And what a shot in the arm that would be for Texas baseball going into the postseason. Not that they need it. They've been perfectly fine without Ballou. Matter of fact, they've been better without him because they've risen all the way up to the number 1 ranking in America. But you get, I'm telling you, one of the best all-around players in college baseball added back into your lineup before the most important time of the year. What a blessing that would be for Texas. That is a double shot of espresso for this Longhorn team. And talking about first world problems with Texas football, I have a first world problem with Texas baseball trying to figure out who to take out to put Max Ballou in. I think you have to take somebody out because Ballou is that good. But man, this team has been getting contributions from so many guys, 1 through 9, every single night that, man, it's going to be hard to take somebody out of the lineup, but quite the luxury for Schloss to have. I mean, Texas, you feel like right now has, 10 guys, maybe even 11 guys who are capable of being everyday players. You add Ballou in there, that just gives you even more depth than you have right now. It's a damn good team that could be getting even better. So Jonah Williams back this weekend, Max Ballou on his way back. And of course, Texas at Arkansas at Baum Walker starting tomorrow. The Hogs have lost 3 consecutive SEC series for the first time since 2007. Maybe it's a good time to get them, but they are going to be very, very desperate and hungry to beat one of their biggest rivals. We will take a deep dive look into this Arkansas team on tomorrow's show. We'll preview the entire series between the Horns and the Hogs coming up on tomorrow's episode. We'll have more sound from Steve Sarkisian and some Texas football recruiting nuggets as well. That's why you got to keep it locked in to Locked On Longhorns every single day. And to those of you who do that, thank you very much. If you made it this far, please like, please subscribe, please share, please leave a comment, and rate 5 stars if you're listening via podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Portal Show. Brian Smith has all of the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings, so you can be the most informed college football fan throughout all of these rapid changes going on in the landscape of college sports. Find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Again, plenty to get to tomorrow. Never a dull moment on the 40 acres. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.